Hello, this is Andrew Hill, and again I'm talking about Doing Ethics, which is the textbook by Lewis Vaughn for our course, The Introduction to Ethics. Today I'm going to be talking about Chapter 1, which is just Ethics in Examined Life. And assuming that you've read through the chapter, I just want to give you a few examples to underscore and help flesh out some of the key concepts. Because anytime that we are looking to master a concept, we want to make sure that we can define it. We want to make sure that we can distinguish it by comparing and contrasting it. And we want to make sure we can give some examples of it. So what I'm going to do right now is run through page 7 on Chapter 1. There's a little thing called a quick review, and it has some of the key concepts for Chapter 1. And I'm going to run through some of those and use marriage as an example to help compare and contrast these key topics. So the first is just ethics. Ethics is the philosophical study of morality. So in the class, we're going to be looking at morals and morality, which is the second big term. It's just beliefs about what's right or wrong, good or bad. So we got to get at that. And the first way to distinguish those beliefs is to make sure that we separate them from what's legal and illegal. Because a lot of us begin to kind of blur those concepts together. But for example, when we're talking about marriage, look at adultery. If you are unfaithful to your spouse, most people in the United States would consider that to be bad or wrong. But it's not necessarily illegal. In fact, apart from a few rare exceptions to that, like if you're in the military, something the uniform, the UCMJ, the Uniform Code of Military Justice, that's going to have its own set of rules for people in the military. But for your average citizen off to, a convention in Las Vegas, the fact of the matter is it might be bad, it might be wrong, but committing adultery on that weekend jaunt is not against the law. So we can see that what we're talking about is clearly within the realm and the province of good and bad or right or wrong. That's what morality has to do with. And ethics is studying that and looking at it. But it's the philosophical study of that. And that's the first distinction from the next 4 key concepts we get in our quick study, which are 2 things I'm going to group together, which are descriptive ethics and then applied ethics. And then also then look separately and group together normative ethics and metaethics. So let me start with the first 2, descriptive ethics. I just said that ethics is the philosophical study of morality, which is good and bad, right or wrong. But descriptive ethics has to do with the scientific study of morality. And that distinction is this. Imagine that there's a social scientist, and he's going to do a study. So he gets on a plane, and he flies to Togo, which is a small country in Africa. And he gets out, and he's wearing his little white lab coat, and he's got his clipboard, and he's walking around, and he's observing people. And he's writing down, he's describing the ethics, he's describing the morality of the people there. And he would see, for example, in regards to marriage, that polygamy, being married to more than one person at a time, is common practice. In fact, it's legal in Togo for a man to have 2, 3, 4, 5 wives. In fact, it's not just legal, but it's generally accepted as the right thing. It's good. It's normal. It's the norm. So he's not there to judge our little social scientist. He's there to just write this down and describe what he sees. That's descriptive ethics. That's the scientific study of morality. He's not saying how things should be or should not be. He's just writing it down what he sees. Now, I grouped that with the other concept of applied ethics. And applied ethics is kind of a small corner of ethics because it has to do with the application of ethics to particular professions like medicine and law, where they have a specialized code of ethics for the people within just that profession. So it's very limited, and it says if you're going to be licensed by the state to practice medicine or to practice law, you also have to do it according to these rules. It's a source of authority which is different than the law, but again, it only applies to people in the profession. So, for example, coming back to marriage, an example here would be that if there's a lawyer who has a client and he ends up having a relationship with this client, they have an affair, and they're married to other people, it turns out, again, that would not be illegal, but it is clearly against the code of ethics for attorneys. And the teeth to that code is that if you violate it, you can lose your license. If somebody violates the code of ethics and they're found in violation of that code, they could have their license pulled. So again, it's a source of authority which reinforces what's good practice, what is seen as the best ways to practice this particular profession. Medicine and law, two good classic examples. But you can see that given the small number of people that are in this profession, it's going to be kind of a small corner of ethics. And then grouped together, the next two big concepts, again, right out of the box on page 7, are normative ethics and metaethics. And normative ethics is, again, it's kind of that standard. It's what's normal. It's the norm. It's what do we see around us. Specifically described as the study of the principles, rules, or theories that guide our actions. So if you're faced with a difficult dilemma, you might want to know, what are the principles, the rules, the theories that guide our actions here? What do other people do in similar situations? What's the standard? Just like polygamy is the standard or the norm in Togo, monogamy, being married to one person at a time, in the United States is the norm. And in fact, again, to kind of make sure we're clear about the examples of this, for many years, in all the states in the United States, the definition of marriage was this relationship between one man and one woman. And that takes us into the next thing, which is metaethics. Metaethics is the stepping back and asking why. We know what the what is, the norm. But why is it? Where did that come from? Where did that standard come from? And does it still make sense to us in the light of our lived experience? So, for example, metaethics is just the study of the meaning and logical structure of moral beliefs. So what's happened is, to give you an example of this, is that many states over the last 10 years have said, well, we know what the norm is. It's one man and one woman in terms of marriage in our state. Does that still make sense? And some states like Texas have looked at it and said, yes, we're perfectly comfortable with that being, continuing to be the standard or the norm. Other states have said, no, now we think we're going to, for a variety of reasons, change the laws. We're going to now allow same-sex marriage. And the point here is not so much whether that's right or wrong, but you can see that there's a difference between the standard or the norm and this process of examining that, trying to decide whether you should continue it or change it. That's the heart of metaethics. It's the stepping back and looking at the meaning, the logical structure of this, and trying to decide, okay, based on that, do we go forward? So right there, we've had a couple of the key concepts: ethics, morality, and then grouped together, we've had descriptive ethics and applied ethics, and normative ethics and metaethics. In the next section, I'll come to the last two things in this little quick review, which is the difference between instrumental value and intrinsic value. But again, this is just to help us with some examples around these key concepts in Chapter 1. Thanks.